Hey, what's up? Got a good one for you today. So, even though this channel is focused predominantly on manga, I'm also a fan of Western comics. One of my favorite Western comic creators is this guy, Chris Ware, who's been making very sad, often quite strange comics for a long and illustrious career. I've been collecting his books for a while. I brought out my collection here. This is probably the thing he's best known for now. An extremely experimental and creative, ambitious work called Building Stories. This actually says Building Stories if you kind of follow the letters properly. And just like the cover of the box, it's a non-linear reading experience where you just kind of pop this thing open. I can't really do it on camera. There's no way to. Alright, this is worth doing. You open it up, and it's full of all sorts of books of various sizes and construction material that all have comics within them. The comics tell an interwoven, complex story throughout many years and generations, all taking place in one building. So you can see that first one was like a hardcover bound book. This one just stapled together. This one I think is really nice. It reminds me of those like little golden books with the embossing on the side and kind of a thick cardboard cover. I think this is an amazing idea. I think this is just a fantastic project, expertly recognized, expertly realized, just an amazing kind of artifact to own. You know, how often do you get a product like this, like a book, that contains no copywriting information, contains no barcode or anything like that, but because it's encapsulated within this larger commercialized product, can exist wholly as itself, wholly as an element of this work. And if you dig down deeper, you can see there's like newspaper style comics, gigantic broadsheets that you have to kind of fold out to read. Amazing stuff. So an example of kind of how experimental his work can become. Another project that he was, or perhaps continues to still do, is the Acme Novelty Library. So this is the first edition of the Octane Novelty Library, which at first looked like maybe it would just be a series of comic books, you know, just sort of single issue type books. The subject matter of the comics, of course, are not your traditional Superman adventure, but just a middle-aged man living out a sad, lonely life, mixed with strange, nightmarish adventures, half recalled from his youth, half dreamt. So this came out, and then sometime later, this, which is volume 2 of the Acme Novelty Library, which you can see is completely different in terms of paper size. The content is wildly different. This being the adventures of Quimby the Mouse, who kind of has a lot of the visual hallmarks of some kind of Disney-esque mascot, you know, the big gloves, the big shoes, but has much more existential bleakness, and a lot of these are just kind of like manically condensed, hyper detailed explorations of the tedium and heaviness of life. Ooh, fantastic. So I don't have all of the issues of the Acme Novelty Library. Unfortunately, they've started coming out in all sorts of shapes and forms. Another one I didn't think to bring out, but whatever. So what other stuff do I have? This is some kind of like prehistory of his stuff. This and this are his 2 date books, just kind of a collection of things from his scrapbook, which he carries around with him every day. So it has like a lot of sketching practice and stuff. You can see kind of a more realism side to his artwork instead of the kind of flat cartoonish style that he often employs. Yeah, a lot of talent, some comics in here too. A lot of autobiographical things, journal entries, diaries. Pretty amazing books, just so rich in content, so almost hypnotic as you just kind of sink into his mind state and see all facets of his life kind of worming their way into the page. This is the most recent thing he had released until now. Whew. The Chris Ware monograph, a gigantic, in every respect, book. It's got a bit of dust it picked up. Where he basically goes through his entire career, providing drafts and kind of a context in which he was making it, photos of from his life around that time. It dives into all of the different printings and editions and the processes in getting that made. This is pretty amazing. Here, we'll just adjust the camera instead of trying to haul this up. It has books within the book. You can see, you can flip through this little comic adventure within this one. Just really another mind-blowingly creative work. Somewhat like building comics, I think, in terms of its non-linearity. Its kind of just hugeness of information. Its experiments with form and presentation. So yeah, fantastic stuff. But for me, the work that stands out is the other one that he's kind of most famous for, which is Jimmy Corrigan, the smartest kid on Earth. So this was a story that was originally serialized across maybe a dozen or so editions of the Acme Novelty Library. It's quite unique among his work in its dedication to just a fairly straightforward story. There are, of course, a lot of his hallmarks in terms of like mixed media and stuff. There's sections in here where you can cut out the pages to build a zoetrope or a model of the house in which Jimmy is staying, or things like that. But for the most part, it's just sort of a graphic novel. You know, it has a non-linear story and some kind of breaks into people's imagination and such, but I'd say it's one of his more straightforward works. And it received just boundless critical acclaim. This is one of my favorite graphic novels of all time. It left just this impossibly to match legacy of what kind of the sad, haunting space a graphic novel could occupy. Something that really nothing had ever really matched, I think, this quality and depth of emotion before in the medium, and rarely since. So this came out, oh boy, the copyright page is somewhat overwhelming. You know, things like this even. Chris Ware just has to exert his personality. At any rate, I want to say this came out kind of in the early 2000s, like maybe 2004, 2005. It must say it somewhere. No? Alright, well, let's do a bit of research. I just want to really show the emphasize just how long I've been waiting for this. Originally published in 1995. Well, I think that's the start of the serialization. The final version, this collection of all of the serialized ones in the Acme Novelty Library, came out in 2000, I guess. 2000. Okay. So pretty soon after that, he started putting another serialized story in the Acme Novelty Library called Rusty Brown, which seemed to be kind of a similar story about, you know, a lonely man kind of facing his old age, really trying to just scrape together some sort of sense of human connection. The characters' personalities are totally different, the setting is totally different, but it seemed like he still wanted to tell more stories in this mode, this very kind of biographical, deep dive into a character mode. So I think probably 4 or 5 Rusty Brown stories came out. Then for a while he was doing a recurring comic for some, I want to say it was the New Yorker or something like that, that featured characters from the same Rusty Brown universe. And then there was other complete kind of like spin-offs of characters that were released as Acme Novelty Library things. I want to say that Building Stories has some Rusty Brown crossover aspect, but I could be wrong about that. It seemed to become this strange opus project that was both consuming everything but never really being his primary focus. And as he started doing much more kind of crazy, ambitious things like Building Stories, I kind of thought the era of Rusty Brown was over, that whatever was released was what was released, and, you know, it wasn't really a complete story, but that was fine. That was just all he wanted to do with that character. Until now. 19 years after the completion of Jimmy Corrigan, and at least a decade since I thought that kind of era was over, I received something in the mail today, which I'm quite excited to see. It's weird to feel excited about something like this, because I know when I read it, it's going to make me, like, cry a lot, feel very bleak about the life that I have coming to me, make me feel very bleak about all the small tragedies of all the sad people around me. And it's not really a book that fills you with adventure and exuberance and, you know, that I'm gonna read it and it's so I don't know how to. Whoa, it's big. It's big. I pictured it being the exact same dimensions as Jimmy Corrigan for some reason. This is, like, I really can't overstate how crazy this is to me. This is, like, a book that I probably literally dreamed about a lot. Since I first read Jimmy Corrigan when I was, like, maybe 13 or 14, so well over, well, not half, well over half my life, but I'd say almost exactly half my life ago, I first read Jimmy Corrigan. It had a huge, huge impact on me. And ever since I heard about Rusty Brown, ever since I first read any of the Rusty Brown material, I pictured there being another book, just like this one, that would eventually come along and maybe change my life again. And now it's here. Now it's here, and it's basically exactly what I pictured. It's another big, fat book with roughly these dimensions and all sorts of Chris Ware's iconic Art Deco, super flat, raw human emotion. I don't even know. How do you describe something like this? Ooh, it smells so good. It smells like ink. I love that smell. Okay. I see mazes. I see crossword puzzles. I see excerpts of a TV guide you can see on the top right there. The integration of the reviews into it, of course, is pretty crazy. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's like a crossword puzzle. So just on, I can take this out quite easily. Oh my gosh, hold on. All right, this is maybe crazy. Here, you can get the scoop with me. It starts with a depiction of the Rusty Brown metropolis and the Rusty Brown headquarters and the Rusty Brown command center. It's just perfect. It's everything I could have hoped for. So I'm taking off the dust jacket, and it looks pretty extraordinary. So this is the book without the dust jacket. Looks pretty cool. Chris Ware, Pantheon Books. It's finally here. So this folds out into, I don't know. I don't know how to describe this. It's like a big kind of mandala looking thing on the bottom. At the top, it's a selection of isometric shots of locations. It looks like maybe all in the school. So I think this story is going to be a lot of Rusty Brown's childhood, kind of intermixed with his adult life. There's this side panel, which kind of folds up into the dust jacket. that has, as you can see, like a crossword puzzle and optical illusions and like a jumble. There's some kind of origami-esque instructions on how to turn the dust jacket into some other sort of arts and crafts sort of thing. We've got space. Oh man. I just can't get over Chris Ware's brilliance, his childlike whimsy in creating these sorts of little mysteries, little moments of excitement and interest in every single little bit of his books. You know, that they have these games in them, they have puzzles and pop-out things and crafts, and it's like not a single part of him forgot what it's like to be a child, and yet no one else can capture better. Did I put this on upside down? Yes. No one else can capture the heaviness of adulthood either. And not just the heaviness of adulthood, but kind of like the secret suffering of childhood, the long segments of, oh man, of hopelessness and confusion and distress and loss, the overwhelming feeling of loss that you can only really get as a child when these losses are your first. Holy wow, it's here! It's here! And I guess I'll just start reading it, huh? I guess that's just what happens next when you get a book. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. This is gonna be some pretty heavy stuff, I think. Oh yeah, there's a self-insert character. Franklin Christensen Ware. Franklin Christensen Ware is Mr. Ware. It's very clearly him. Like, it looks like every picture I've seen of him. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay. Alright. At long last, I have another book that can comfortably sit next to this one on the shelf. Not that, you know, that it was out of place among the other Chris Ware books, but it's different, you know? It's just like a little different. Okay. Alright, I think that's it for this video. I don't know. I really didn't have any real plans on what to talk about. I just really wanted to emphasize how crazy this is, that this book is finally here. It's finally here. Alright. That's all for now. Bye-bye.